Welcome to Hidden Meanings, everybody, and it is good to have you back aboard. How you doing? Do you notice this? Yeah, little fur here. I tell you what that's about. I was pre-diabetic, and I weighed close to 200 pounds, and the doctor said, hey, you know, what you better do here, you better lose weight. And he said, if you don't lose weight, you're going to wind up, with diabetes. So I said, okay, I got to lose weight. So I lost about 30 pounds. But you know what happens? When you lose weight like that and you're older, you start to get looking like a turkey down here. And I tried it. I brought one of those things. Don't recommend it. You put under here and you go like that. All it does is make you a little seasick. But so I said, what am I going to do? I didn't like the way that was hanging down there. So I figured, cover it, get a little rug, a little carpeting, put it on there. So you'll have to let me know what you think. I know there's a Lynn who comes, a member of the group, member of the board. She doesn't like it. But what are you going to do? Hey, I just finished doing an 8-minute spot for YouTube that you can see. And, you know what I forgot? I forgot to tell you where we're at and how you can get in touch with me. So let's get that out of the way before I tell you about YouTube. Hidden Meanings, Post Office Box 569, Forked River, New Jersey, 08731. And that's the mailing address. If you can help contribution-wise, I would be very grateful. It's getting a little more expensive because we're getting more people on, more bandwidth, and Yahoo is jacking up the price. But anyhow, whatever you can do. The website, www.hiddenmeanings.com, and you can email me at bdona910782000 at yahoo.com. Okay? Anyhow, I just finished up. I did a half hour. I didn't do a half hour. I did 8 minutes on YouTube about trying to understand what we are, what aliens are, what our departed loved ones are, trying to change the whole mindset so that we can start living on this planet in a harmony with the big stuff out there. I don't know how people cannot come to grips with the reality that 600 AD Paco Votan, who was part of the Emerald UFO landing fleet, said that at about this time, his date was, it would culminate, it would end December the 21st, 2012. Well, anyhow, he said at about this time, people would become so industrialized, so technologically creative, that they would lose their interconnectedness with nature because of their obsession with profit and greed. Well, in the Gulf of Mexico, as I'm speaking, the largest dumping of oil into the Gulf, the ocean, in the history of the world is taking place. I mean, can't someone put two and two together? Al Gore's been yelling about global warming for how long? And people, they don't want to believe him. Not because what he's saying is wrong, but because he's Al Gore. Oh, well, I don't believe him. And it doesn't make any difference. They don't question whether, are we dumping too much CO2 into the air? atmosphere. I mean, you can go on the website, you can go on yourself, on Google, whatever you want, and look at what's happening to the ocean. The oxygen is being sucked out of the ocean by CO2. The coral reefs are dying. The fish are dying. And I just put a new thing on there. Do you remember Jacques Cousteau? Jacques Cousteau was the son of the late... No. Jacques Cousteau was the very famous diver and explorer of the ocean and so forth. His son, Felipe Cousteau, was on Bill Maher show. And he said, it's over. 90% of life in the ocean is dead. When are we going to stop? See? And so these things came to us from an alien force back in 600 AD. It wasn't from some Mayan jungle guy. That's ridiculous. What happened was the Emerald UFO fleet landed in what was called then Chem, K-H-E-M. Well, Chem is what now is present-day Egypt. And they landed there, and after a while, they sent out detachments to different parts of the world. Some of them wound up being called Pelasgians. They wound up in Greece, and that's how we have all of these smart people in classic Greece talking about atoms and photons and philosophy when the rest of the world was selling sheep and splitting rocks. Some of them wound up in India, and there's a lot of information in the Indian Mahabharata of Krishna about aerial warfare and UFOs. Some of them wound up in South America in the land of the Mayans. And Pacal Votan was pictured in a carving in stone that the Mayans did. They pictured him as flying in a spaceship. So, it's obvious what happened. We have been warned by an alien force from other planets, other dimensions of the universe as to exactly what was going to happen. Now people will say, well, why don't they come back now? The reason that they are not coming back in physical form now, but they are coming back. The reason they're not coming back in physical form is because the Earth race has evolved technologically to a point where there would be combat. And in responding to that combat, the alien forces would cause tremendous destruction upon the Earth, loss of life, destruction that you can't even imagine. And so it is not practical for a landing force to come back. But how do they get here? And do they get here? And this was the point that I tried to make on the UFO thing I just did, but on the YouTube thing I just did, but that was only 8 minutes long. Let me show you how they come back. In order to understand this, you have to stop looking for little green men as aliens. Remember something. Back in the ancient times, when the aliens came, the more primitive peoples that lived on the earth then didn't call them aliens, they called them gods. They called them spiritual angels or gods or whatever. Because they came from the sun, they came from the sky. But as I said, now it is not a practical or safe thing for them to do. But they still come. They have to come because we are getting very close to December 21st, 2012, and the changes are going on. You don't have to have me sit here and tell you that. You want to look at global warming, you want to look at the ocean dying, you want to look at the Gulf spill, you want to look at the volcanoes, the tsunamis, the earthquakes, you want to look at the Twin Towers falling down, all of this stuff that's going on, the economic meltdown, all of this stuff is happening right before your eyes. Unfortunately, as predicted in the Bible, most people will pay no attention to it. That's what the story of Noah was all about. The story of Noah was, hey, I'm telling you, and you can see with your own eyes, something's going to happen. Something is not going right, and something is going to happen, and you better pay attention to it. But everybody, it says in the Bible, went about doing their things as they normally do, and they said, this guy's nuts, until the waters came and swept them away. Same thing happening today. Everything is written on your television screen. It's written in the newspapers. It's written on the websites. It's written all over the place. Something is going on, and something is going on that is not pleasant. So what do people do? Well, we can't stop doing this because it'll hurt the bottom line. It'll hurt our economy. Folks, if they don't stop, there isn't going to be any economy. That's what Felipe Cousteau was telling Bill Maher about, the destruction of the ocean. You can't do this. There is a thing going on about a farm out in Ohio, Conklin Farm or something, where they're brutalizing farm animals. There's a big protest going on there. This is what we do in factory farming. We brutalize these animals, and according to the Johns Hopkins University scientists, people are setting themselves up for a plague that can't be stopped by antibiotics because you're eating antibiotics every day. That's what you eat for dinner. I'll have my antibiotics with gravy, and there's antibiotics in the gravy because that's what they put in these animals before they wind up on your table. And so when the John Hopkins, you can look it up on the internet, look up John Hopkins and zip through until you find the story that they're afraid of a plague because of factory farming. But we do it for profit. So how are the aliens coming now? If you go to church or take part in religion, you know the story there. Oh, Holy Spirit, come and fill me. Oh, may the light, the guardian light come. What they're talking about is a photon coming into their brain. That's what it is. That's the way the whole world works. It works off of electricity. The earth is electric. The universe is electric. It works with photons and electrons. Okay? If you want to get what you call the Holy Spirit or the Holy Photon to come in to you, you can't do it by praying. You can't do it by going to any church. You can't do it by singing a song or reading a book. I mean, that's stuff to support a particular group that doesn't like another group. In order for you to make contact, you have to do it on the basis of how you are made, how the earth is made, how the universe is made electrically. You have to get the vibrating going in the electrons of your pineal gland, which will then absorb the photon, which is what you call God or Spirit or angel, whatever you want to call it. That's what they are, photons. If the Holy Spirit was to come into your body, you'd have to say, oh, wait a minute. Whoa, what the heck is that? What is it? How can there be such a thing? I mean, it's got to be something. What is it? Well, it's photon. It's intelligent. It's light. Jesus spoke about it. He said, if your eye be single, get the pineal gland going, your body will fill with light. How does it work? This is how it works. The photons, which are the aliens, call them God, Spirit, whatever you want to call it, they vibrate and their electrons send out an offering message to you. 90% of the people on this planet Earth have no clue about this, and so they don't answer. Okay? Remember what Jesus said, I stand at the door and knock. If anybody will open the door, I'll come in. Nobody opens the door because they don't hear him knocking. Okay? They don't know. They have no clue because they don't know how it works. But there's no reason for them not to have a clue because it was the Jesus of the Bible who said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. That's him. He's light. He'll fill you with light. The photon will enter. But you have to do your part. You have to get into meditation and do what Jesus said. Take no thought. Practice the single eye. Okay? And then when you go in and you do these things, the vibration starts in the pineal gland, the electrons start vibrating, and that is what absorbs the photon. NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, tell us that yes, indeed, electrons absorb photons. John Kramer, who is one of the really important physicists of our time, speaks about what he calls transactional interpretation. In other words, a transaction. The photon makes an offer to you. You respond. You come together. The transaction is completed. But you can't do it as a physical person. It doesn't work that way. It works on the electronics inside of you. You are a photon. You have electrons in here. If you start vibrating those electrons in meditation, you'll absorb the photon. You'll absorb the alien. You'll absorb the God. So you're going to have religious people who haven't a clue as to what the hell I'm talking about. And they'll say, oh, you'll open your mind to devils. Well, as soon as you hear somebody say that, you should run like crazy and get away from them because they don't know what they're talking about. How can you tell if you will not? You don't want to open yourself to a negative photon. How can you tell you're not going to absorb something negative? The reason is the spin and momentum of your electrons has to be the same as the spin and the momentum of the offering photon, or you'll repel it. You will repel it. Now, if you are in a negative spin and momentum, you'll absorb a negative a photon. That's what's so dangerous when we execute criminals. We're just killing the body. You're not killing the person. You're killing the body. And you're sending off this negative photon. And the first thing the photon does out of instinct is to seek a body. That's what photons do. We all want to be in bodies so that we can all enjoy the senses, the chocolate ice cream and the love making and all of that stuff. It's all fun because that's what the senses are. So that's what photons do. So we all enter bodies. Okay? Now, when we have a situation where you have negative photon, you have negative people. And when the spin and the momentum of a negative person matches the spin and the momentum of an executed killer, rapist, or whatever, that photon of the killer, rapist, or whatever enters into this negative person, and you got this guy all over again. You got this rapist, this back. Do you understand? And that's the way it works. So then you say to yourself, well, how do these aliens today enter or come to Earth? The lady next door to you could be an alien. You, and if you're watching me, you probably have an alien photon in you. This is the way it works. They're not going to come back as people now because it's too dangerous, but they've got to be as people, so they enter inside of people. Remember in the Bible where it says, you better be nice to people because sometimes you entertain angels unaware? What that means is sometimes you entertain aliens unaware. Who are you looking at? Sometimes you entertain aliens unaware. So this is how it happens. The aliens have to be on Earth because they have to work within the Earth concepts of changing things, stopping things, changing the course of people upon the Earth before we destroy the whole damn thing. And so what they do is they send out these vibrations. The photons send out vibrations. There's trillions and billions and skillions of them, and they send out vibrations. Now you go into meditation. You, in meditation, are more than likely a person who is in harmony with the earth. Most people that are in meditation harmonize with the earth. It's kind of like the Buddhist. You don't hurt things. You don't hurt the earth. You don't hurt the animals, okay? And you look to flow in a harmony with that which is peace and love and all of the nice things that we're supposed to be enjoying on this battlefield that is called Earth. When you get into meditation, and you start into a deep meditation, the pineal gland electrons start vibrating. You absorb that photon that has made the offer. You now have an alien photon embedding itself in the electrical circuitry of your brain. And now, where before there was one of you, now there are two of you. And so now you are going to be more determined about the environment, more determined about animals, more determined about peace and friendship and culture and all of the things that are supposed to be nice and good because you have the alien inside of you. Now, if you're a religious person, oh, well, that's, you have the Holy Spirit. I don't care what the heck you want to call it. But what you have is a photon that has entered into you, not because of your praying, not because of your singing, not because of your reading anything or going into any building called the church, none of that stuff. You have it into you because in your meditation, you stimulated and vibrated the electrons in your pineal gland, and you absorbed the photon. This, incidentally, was what I was talking about on the YouTube thing that I just did. This is how we communicate with those members of our family and friends who have passed on. Okay? It takes a total change in your understanding and your attitude about what you are, what they are. I mean, you think of your mother or your father, or you hear their voice, you see their face, the way they dressed, and so forth. That's not it. Can you get to the point of forgetting that? Okay? That's gone. That's the physical part. But their photon without a body, just as your photon with a body. When your body breaks down, the right angular gyrus of the brain opens its little electric door, and you get out. And they cart your body off to the junkyard that we call a cemetery. It's the same thing as they cart your car off to the junkyard, which we call a junkyard. They don't take you with it. So there you are, outside of the body. I mean, think of something. Yeah, the width of the side of your skull is less probably than a quarter of an inch. Maybe it's a quarter of an inch or less. That's all that separates you from the universe. Okay? And so if you can bring yourself to say, I am going to communicate with those who have passed on photon to photon, not person to person, not in English or whatever language is your language, not in the earth ways, but in the universe ways. Photon to photon. Then you can make contact. They will make contact with you. And though you may not, you will not hear words spoken as you are familiar with words on the earth, you'll know. You will know that this communication is going on, and eventually you will start to learn the quantum language, the photon language, and your communication in that realm will start to be clear, even while you're in a human body. I mean, once you're willing to say, okay, I can't communicate with them as a body to a body because they don't have a body, as a person to a person because they're not a person, as Uncle Charlie or as Grandma because they're not Uncle Charlie or Grandma, but they are. They know everything from the past. they know everything in the future, like you do too once you're outside of the body. You see, as a photon, when you're inside of the body, your brain then, which you attach to, you embed into this body and brain, just like the sperm embedded into the egg, okay? You embed into it, and then as attached to it, you're subject to all the constraints of the physical form. You don't know everything in the past. You don't know everything in the future. You know, one of the most graphic, and I talked about this before, but one of the most graphic instances, I don't know, explanations of this was done, I believe, by Paul Davies. I believe it was Paul Davies, another physicist. He said, tonight you go outside and you look up at the sky and you see a star. The photon in that star knew 1,000 years ago the exact moment that you were going to go out in the yard and look at it, and it left the star to travel for 1,000 years, so it would be right at the spot of the retina of your eye when you looked. Now, you can't even conceive of such a thing like that. But you know why that is? Because you can't conceive of the quantum world. You can't conceive of the existence of a universe that is totally and completely different than anything on this planet. It's not subjected to the constraints of the physical. That's why, I mean, you have twins all over the place. Not just one twin. I mean, you have copies of you all over the place. And when one of you is doing something here, the other one is doing something the opposite over there. But you don't say, oh, well, I don't know if I believe that. Who cares? If you sit down and you start to think or read about some of the things talked about by Max Tegmark or David Deutsch or Paul Davies or John, and you realize this is true. Excuse me, this is what goes on in the quantum world. And so there you are, right now, looking at me, not knowing who I really am. And I'm telling you this stuff, and you're probably thinking, did you see that? Not because you don't know. You don't know. I mean, hundreds of years ago, you could have sat down at some pub or something that they had or have, whatever, with the candles glowing and started talking about cell phones and computers and airplanes and submarines and all of this stuff. And people say, this guy's nuts. But here you are, and you take this stuff for granted. It doesn't stimulate you at all. Your deceased parents, your deceased relatives, your deceased friends are trying to call you. You never answer the phone because you didn't know you had a phone. And for those of you who are meditating, you have to begin to understand how and why and under what circumstances you can expect contact. It has to be understood. It is not in the three-dimensional. You're not going to hear your late sister talk to you. You're not going to hear your father talk to you. You're not going to hear words per se. You're not going to see them other than in your imagination, which you can construct. You can construct. Want to do something fun? I'll show you how you can construct. While we're talking here, and I'm going to stop, close your eyes. You, too. Close your eyes. All right. See the house you lived in as a child. I can see mine. I got my eyes open. See it? All right. Did you ever hear Elvis Presley? I want you to hear Elvis Presley singing You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Do you hear? Okay. Now, the difference in the photon realm than that is because of the fact that in the photon realm, there is not Elvis Presley. Elvis is there, but as a photon. He remembers being Elvis. He remembers what he was before Elvis. But once he enters into another body, all of those things will be forgotten. And the reason that is creation concludes that, well, if we're going to have people down there and they're going to be remembering all of the previous relatives they had, they're going nuts. They're not going to be able to function. So this is what you give up. When you're a photon, you know everything of the past, you know everything of the present, you know everything of the future. You know what's going to happen. But when you choose to go into a body, then you start vibrating. The heck with this stuff. I know all this stuff. I want to have some fun. So you want a body. And you start vibrating. There is a woman who has had sex. Oh, yes. And she has a little fetus growing in her body. On the 49th day, the electrons in there start vibrating. The photon is attracted and absorbed by the vibrating electrons into that fetus. Now the photon, which knew everything of the future, past, present, knew all this intelligent stuff, now the photon has given that up to go goo goo gaga and all of that stuff until it evolves physically. That's the way it works. And so once then the body dies, you go back to being the photon that knows everything and all of this kind of stuff. But you know what you're going to do? You're going to look to get another body. And it may not even be a goo goo gaga baby. It could be somebody older. Depending on who receives you. Now, if you are assigned as part of the alien force to work on this earth, who are you looking at? Then you will enter a body, and it will not necessarily be a child because you'll have work to do. You'll have things to tell people, and you'll have things to show people, and you will be part of this great change that is going on. When you think of all of this, consciousness being photon, because photons are conscious, consciousness being photon is electrical. The universe is electrical. So everything operates on electricity. Now you look and you see volcanoes erupting, earthquakes, tsunami. There's always been these things, but now it seems like they're stronger. Now it seems like they're coming quicker. You're seeing economic collapses because of what? What is causing the economy to collapse? It's collapsed by people. And the collapse from people comes from their minds, their brains, their consciousness. What I'm saying is, when Pakel Votan predicted the great shaking that would take place leading up to 2012, you can't have the earth shaking without the brains shaking. Because they're all electrically connected. You have volcanoes going off in your head. You have earthquakes going off in your head. And the results of those earthquakes and these volcanoes going off in people's heads are what we see all the time. They're dropping bombs on everybody. They're plowing planes into the buildings. They're exploiting people for money. They've got priest uniforms on and they're raping children. There's a shaking, a terrible shaking. And so the shaking cannot be limited to the outside, it's inside of you. And so not only then does the environment change, you change. See? And that's what Pakel Votan was talking about. He says, there's going to be these great changes, this great shaking. I know that the NASA predicted that between now and 2012 there are going to be these explosions, solar explosions, which are going to have an effect on the electrical grids on the planet Earth. And I've seen a lot of scientists talk about this. Oh, there's going to be, this and that happening to the electrical grids. But none of them ever say, right up here, that's an electrical grid. If the electrical grids outside are going to be affected, this electrical grid is affected too. Let's go back and look at what Pakel Votan, what he knew, what he said. Pakel Votan. And remember, this guy's an alien. He's not some guy out of the jungle. He knew that humanity... what I want you to do? I don't want to cough in here. Excuse me. You know what I want you to do? When we read about Pakel Votan, think about the oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. Just have that in the back of your head. Let's look again. Pakel Votan knew that humanity would become disconnected from the laws of the natural world and would fall ignorant of our sacred interdependence with nature. He foretold of our accelerated technological society, that's what we have now, and the resulting damage of our collective divergence from natural law, excuse me, in exchange for materialist values. Because I messed that up. He said, our accelerated technological society would result in damage. Think of the oil disaster in the Gulf. And we would damage the earth in exchange for materialist values, in exchange for money. Oh, I showed you quite a while ago the way that so many of us miss what's going on and what's going to happen because we do not have the God-given instinct any longer. Our instinct, and that's what Pakel Votan was talking about, our instinct to know what to do, to know what's coming, has been destroyed by our lack of use of our inner being, our lack of stimulating the pineal gland. And when we showed this some time ago. You remember the tsunami that occurred several years ago? Remember that? And they had, there was thousands of people swept out to sea and bodies laying all over the place. But you know what? When the helicopters flew over, he said, there's no wild animal bodies. What? How come? Because they knew. They knew something was coming. And so they took their families and they went up into the hills and the mountains and continued life as normal while the humans were killed. Did you ever hear the song, Jesus loves the little children? It seems he loves the little children of the elephants and the gorillas more because they were all saved. Why? Why were they saved? Because they knew. They have a connection to what we call God. They have a connection to what we call the universe, which we describe as instinct, and we lost ours. We lost ours. And the reason we lost ours is because we are totally consumed with Walmart and Toyota and General Motors and television and 3D, and reality means nothing anymore. But we can regain that. You can regain that. But you have to be willing to work at it. So many people go flocking to church, and they're all kneeling in front of some guy who hasn't a clue, who knows nothing about what we're talking of. Nothing. Was in San Francisco not long ago that there was an oncoming earthquake out in the Pacific, and then they had the big earthquake in Haiti. And they had Pier 39 in San Francisco, which was always filled with seals. It was a tourist attraction. And one day something happened. And on the left you see the seals. The next day they were gone. And then the shaking started all over the earth. So animals knew in advance something was going to happen. In the mythology of Noah, he knew in advance something was going to happen. But nobody else. There's a lot of people who write me and say, what do you think's going to happen? Well, my goodness. I'm sorry for that, but anyhow. People today are making up all kinds of stories about 2012. Well, I don't think anything's going to happen. I don't think the world's going to come to an end, and they go on and on. But you know what? The prediction made by Paco Votan was not about the end of the world. It was the end of the culture as we know it. And you're seeing it. You're living through it right now. You're experiencing it. All of the things about the global warming and the financial meltdowns and the oil and all these things that are being yelled about every day, it's happening. One of the most graphic examples of leading up to 2012 is when you sat in your home and watched the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center fall to the ground in an hour. Oh yes, that was connected to leading up to 2012. It was a sign of what was going to happen. Why? Because the minds, the brains, are saturated with the negativity and the obsession with the physical. The negativity and the obsession with religion. Religion which exists to build one group against the other. I did a thing recently about everybody being an atheist, and it's true, everybody is. You're an atheist. You say, oh, I'm no atheist. What are you talking about? When I say, do you believe that Hare Krishna is God? You say, no, I'm a Christian. Well, what if Hare Krishna turns out to be God? You don't believe it. You're an atheist. You believe in what your particular group told you. your culture told you this is the way it is. And what do? All of these different religions. They hate each other. They launch missiles and kill each other. You know what? There's not one of them that is true. Not one. And yet everybody believes in one or the other, which means they're all atheists. They don't know of the reality of the quantum world. They have no idea. And that's what Pacal Votan was trying to tell us. And look again, he said, we're going to get so consumed in ourselves, so consumed in material things, that we're going to cause great damage. You know, all of this stuff isn't coming because some god somewhere else said, oh, let's go down and cause global warming, or excuse me, let's go down and pollute the oceans or things like that. That's ridiculous. We're doing that. People are doing that. December 21st, 2012 is the culmination date. This is the result of what people have done. And somebody says to you, what do you think is going to happen in 2012? No. It's what's happening now. What's happening now? There's going to be a change. Somewhere there's going to be a mass influx of gamma energy that is going to turn the human brain to the point where it realizes, hey, we screwed everything up here. We were given this magnificent planet, and we used it as a battlefield, and we polluted, and we harmed the earth, and we even tortured the very living beings that were given to us to sustain us. We did it. The wild animals, they don't have those materialist values to cause them to lose their connection with nature. And so, they know when we don't know. So the point being that in the brain of a being connected to nature, the change going on in the electro-universe is also going on in their brain. They're flowing in a harmony with it. It's like when you go to the ocean, you got your surfboard. If you turn your back on the wave and you don't flow with it, it'll smash you into the ground. But if you take your surfboard and flow with it, it'll be a wonderful experience. Let me show you a possible connection here that comes to us from the University of Surrey, S-U-R-R-E-Y, in England. And I took it right off the page so you could see yourself that what I was doing here was trying to make sure you saw it with your own eyes. Okay, take a look. Let me, I have to move this. It says here, as are thoughts made of the distributed kind of electronic fields that permeates space and carries the broadcast signals to the TV or radio. Professor John Joe McFadden, School of Biomedical and Life Sciences at Surrey, believes our consciousness mind could be an electromagnetic field. Human beings are electrical devices, and they produce phosphorescence and magnetism and so forth and so on. And basically, say, if we'll bring ourselves to understand these things, if we'll bring ourselves to realize that we're not people. We're photons inside of bodies that are described as people. Let me show you something that was written by Wallace Thornhill and David Talbot. Thornhill is a physicist, Talbot is a writer. But as we get close to winding this down, see if this catches you. The most compelling message of the space age is that we live in an electric universe. Interplanetary, interstellar, intergalactic space is filled with plasma. Plasma is distinguished by the presence of charged particles, and the freely moving electrons in plasma are efficient carriers of electric currents. For today's innovators, electricity is the key to understanding the never-ending surprises of the space age. There is no possible way that you could exist, that you could interact as a human being, unless the interaction was totally electric. Everything external is electric. Everything internal is electric. You are an electric appliance. And in order for you then to begin to understand how to survive in this 2012 stuff, in order for you to understand how to communicate with the higher realms of light, which you call God and spirits and all that stuff, in order for you to understand how to communicate with those who were part of your family or your friends who have passed on, you have to change your concepts of what you are, what they are, and what everything is. You have to get out of your body in the same way that you get out of your car. You open the door and you go into a realm that is totally alien to the three-dimensional physical realm. You don't want to live in your car. You can't exist in your car. That's not what reality is. So you open the door and you get out of it and you start to interact. But what you have failed to realize, and it's because of religion, that in the same way, through your meditation, you have to get out of your body and begin to interact. You have to interact with a whole different form of life, which is the photon form. But the point is, would you be willing to do that? Are you willing to say, I want to talk to my uncle or my father or my mother or my sister or my brother who died. I want to talk to them again. But are you willing to talk to them in the language of the photon? And you say to me, well, I don't know. I don't know what that language is. Would you be willing to learn it? But this is something that people have a problem with because religion has told them, just come in and say some prayers, put some water on your head, and God will come. Baloney. And if you want to see what I mean, if you want to go watch TV tonight, don't plug the television in. Just leave it unplugged. And sit down and pray for it to come on. It can't, because it's electric. And you can pray from now until the cows come home. It's electric. You're electric. You have to do it according to the way that your brain and your body is constructed to allow the photons to embed and for the electrons to go from you and to come to you. And don't sit and tell me, oh, nobody ever said that. I never heard anything. Yes, you did. The dot in the center of the Hindu's head is exactly what this is. The Buddhic meditations, exactly what this is. The Jesus who said the kingdom of God is within you. The Jesus who said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. The Jesus who said, take no thought. All of these instructions were given to you. But we abandoned them. We abandoned them, and instead we decided the only thing I want to hear is what the pastor says. And he hasn't a clue. And the priest is out in the back with the little boy. And then comes and tells you and waves some water in your face or whatever. And he doesn't know. Is there anything that I have said that doesn't make common sense? I mean, is there anything? I mean, if we are in an electric universe, and if our bodies operate on electricity, wouldn't it seem reasonable that we could then continue in a realm beyond the three-dimension physical realm if we started using the electrical circuits that are available to us? Does it make too much sense? You know what the problem is? People are so washed in their brains from the family traditions, from the cultures that say, oh, this is the way it is. You know, I mean, they bring them into school or wherever in the religious and say that the lady sat down and the snake came and talked to her and told her, you can't eat the apple. Or you can eat the apple. And stuff like this becomes the foundation of our culture. You know what the foundation of your culture is? There's a guy in the sky named God. And he sees people doing bad things. Oh, they're going to Atlantic City and they're gambling and they're having sex. Oh, and they're doing all these terrible things. And he's talking to his angels and he said, oh, you know, I can't. There's no way I can forgive these people for all this nasty stuff unless I kill somebody. That's it. I'll kill somebody and then, everything will be okay. I'll be able to forgive them. And the angels are sitting around, oh, who the heck are we going to kill there, Gotti? What do you think? How about Jesus? Yeah, he's always screwing up. Yeah, send him down there and, he's a pain in the... We'll kill him. Well, how are we going to get him down there? We got to get this. There's a little girl. You got to get somebody pregnant. Got to get some kid pregnant. And so, okay, I'll do this. He gets this little girl pregnant. She doesn't know. Now she's got a baby, and then this guy says it's God's baby. Oh, yeah. So they arranged to have his son killed. And the only thing is, God never told the hitmen, Pontius Pilate and his crew, that he arranged all this. So everybody thinks that it's Pontius Pilate that's doing this nasty stuff. And Pontius Pilate, he doesn't know. He's all screwed up, so he's washing his hands. I don't want to know about that. I don't want to know. And everybody's out in the crowd saying, kill him, kill him. And there's God and the angels up there in heaven. Yeah, kill him, kill him. So they kill him. The hitmen that God used to kill his son, and God never told them that he arranged the whole thing. And then when Jesus dies, everybody in the cemetery across the street, according to the book of Matthew, starts crawling out of the graves, wiping the mud and the dirt off of the bones, and they start walking downtown. Yeah, and it's in the Bible. And they go down there and they meet the folks. Hey, how you doing? Where do you live? Up in the cemetery. They got a little plot up there. That is the foundation of our religious and spiritual culture and heritage. Well, you have to really think about it, and think if you're prepared and willing to enter the quantum realm of photon. Your true existence. To get back to that, following the Jesus instructions, because he himself was a UFO alien, and that's for another day, but if you want to read about that, study the Emerald Tablets on the website. His best friend, John the Baptist, had previously been in a UFO and took off and left the earth. They called it a fiery chariot. That was his closest friend. And he told you what to do. Single eye, vibrate the electrons, it'll absorb the photon, and you'll have somebody else living inside of you that knows what's going on, what's going to happen, and both of you will be like the wild animals and run the hell out of the way when the stuff is happening, which is beginning to happen now. Okay? Deal or no deal, as the guy says on television. Here's how you can get in touch.